respectful. All right, so now we can start with decimals. This is going to be an introduction to decimals. This is going to be review. It's going to be fairly straightforward and simple. The hardest part is going to be comparing and rounding. Okay? But to start with, we are going to talk about decimal places. We all know that the decimal separates the whole number from the part of the number, right? When we have a whole number and a part of a number after it, we separate it with a decimal. Okay, the first section of this says write the whole number in words. Okay, it is very important for you to be able to write these in words because when you write a check, you need to be able to spell those numbers. However, I have skipped over all of these in our homework because I know you all hate writing so much. I know, right? Woohoo! Yeah. So, the important thing to remember is that when we see that decimal point, we use the word and. If I say I have $104, that is an incorrect usage of the word and. Okay? $104.32. You're only supposed to use and when you see that decimal point. However, lots of us speak incorrectly and we say, $203. Okay? $6,512. But that's not right. But I find myself saying it like that all the time. Okay? But it's important to know that in this chapter, when we say the word and, we mean that's where the decimal point goes. So, if I were going to say this word, because I'm not going to make you write it out, but I want you to say this word for me using the and in the appropriate place. Mikey, how would you say this word or this number?
143 and 56.
56 what?
Dollars.
Not dollars. We have to classify what comes after that decimal point by its place value. So looking at where the decimal is, once we say 56, we have to say thousandths afterwards because that is in the thousandths place. Notice that when we follow that decimal, we add that little th to each of the place values. And then it's just the opposite of our whole numbers. So we have tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths, 100,000ths, millionths. And you have to classify what comes after your decimal by that place value. So our whole number is 143. See, there I said it again. 143. And because we have our decimal part is 56 thousandths. So these here, I do not think I did not. So if I were to say this number, what is this number? 600ths. If I were to say this number, what is this number? Right? Negative 124 and 52 hundredths. This number. 829 ten thousandths. This one. Laura. 87 and 31 hundredths. This one. Blake, you want to tackle this one? Mikey, you want to tackle this one?
52 and 1,085.
52 and 1,085 10,000ths. So now we know how to say them, where that and goes. Lots of times the decimal is written in words and we have to translate it into standard form or numbers. When we do that, if I were to write 106 and 500ths in standard form, what would it look like? I would start with 106, right? Oh, come on, write for me. 106, that's our whole number part. Where it says and, I have to put a decimal. And then my last part, my 500ths part, can I just throw a 5 up there? Why not? Because it has to go in the hundredths place. So how many tenths do I have? 0.05. So I have to make sure I'm accommodating for each of those places in our place value. Let's see. I have this one that is 12 and 600ths. What would that look like? 12.06. Then I have 54 and 72 thousandths. Laura, how would I write this? $54.072. Okay, this has a decimal. It gives us the words. We have to write them as fractions now. From decimals to fractions is a super simple conversion. This is also on the front of your page if you want to fill this in. So from a decimal to a fraction, 5/10. We see that it is in the tenths place. So what number is going to go on the bottom of my fraction? A 10. And what number goes on the top? A 5. Super simple. 5/10, we would reduce that, of course, because that's not in lowest terms. What would we reduce that to? 1/2. Next, I have 36/100ths. What number goes on the bottom of this fraction? And on the top? And then, of course, can I reduce that one? Yes.
I want you to reduce on the assignment.
Yes. Man. What number goes into both of these? A 6 does not go into 100. Good guess, though. 4. 4 goes into 36 how many times? 9. 4 goes into 100 how many times? 20 what? 25. Next, I have 2/1000ths. 2 goes on the top of my fraction because that is our number in front of our place. What goes on the bottom of my fraction? 1,000. Can I reduce that? Yes, they're both even numbers. What does that reduce down to? 500. 1/500. Finally, we have 700ths. What goes on the top of my fraction? 7. What goes on the bottom of my fraction? 100. Can that be reduced? Nope, that is in lowest terms. On the back of your page, we're going to practice some more of this. We have 0.9. How do I say that as a decimal? 9 what? Tenths. Excuse me. So 9 goes over the top of the next one, 21 and 94 thousandths. This one is going to be written as a mixed number because I have that whole number in front of my decimal. Okay? My whole number can just stay the same. My 94 can go over 1,000. Can those be reduced? $94 1,000ths. Can that be reduced?
Yes.
Yes. By what? Let's just start with an easy one, right? They're both evens. Let's divide them both by 2. 1,000 divided by 2 is 500. 94 divided by 2 is 47. Can that be reduced? It cannot. 47 is a prime number. So 21 and 47 500ths. This one becomes 12 over 100. Is that in lowest terms? No, those are both even numbers, so we can reduce it. What does it become? 6 over 50. Is that in lowest terms? No, because they're both still even numbers.
3 over 25.
So if we divide by 2 on each of these, it becomes 6 over 50. We divide those again, it becomes 3 over 25. What could we have divided by in the beginning? A 4. Could have divided those both by 4 to just divide once. And notice, if you can see through my chicken scratches there, they break that down. Remember how we did that? We wrote those multiples of each number, figured out which ones they had in common, canceled them out. Okay, so if you want to do it that way, that's definitely an option as well. 64 and 8/10. 64 is a whole number. Okay. And then if I want to reduce that down, those are both even numbers. So what does it become? They both can be divided by 2, so it becomes 64 and 4/5. Last one, a negative 209 and 986 thousandths. Negative 209 is our whole number. 986 gets put over 1,000. Then we have to figure out what they can be divided by. They're both even numbers, so we can divide them by 2. So we can end up with a negative 209 and 493 over 500.
What was the lowest?
493 over 500. Okay, let's go back to that first column. That first column where we were writing, let me clear off the screen here. Close enough. Where we are writing it in standard form. If you did not write those down as we were going through them, what is the first one? How do I write the first one? 600ths. 0.06. Negative 124 and 52 hundredths. Decimal what? Just 52? No zeros in that one. They're in this first column here. 829 10,000ths. What did you say, Austin? 829. So that gives us tenths, hundredths, thousandths. Is that what we needed? We need 10,000. You have to put that extra zero in front of that because we need that 9 to end up in our 10,000ths place. 52 and 1,085 10,000ths. I did? 87 and 31 hundredths. 87 decimal 31. So I look and I make sure this is my tenths, this is my hundredths. That matches where it's supposed to be. All right, now the last one. 52 and 1,085 10,000ths. Mikey, help me out. And so I have to put my decimal, then what? So 185, 1 what?
Zero.
1085. I have to make sure I have that 0 in there so my 5 ends up in my 10,000ths place. So tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths. All right, now we'll move on to comparing these decimals. The number of places, decimal places in a number is the same as the number of zeros in the denominator. So if we have 37 hundredths, there are 2 places here, so there are 2 zeros under here. When we're writing these as fractions, that's a great hint as well. The number behind the decimal, the number of places behind that decimal, is the number of zeros you are going to put underneath your fraction. When we compare 2 decimals that are positive, we can look at them digit by digit. So these both have 28 in front of our decimal. So those are the same. After our decimal, they both have a 2 the same. Then we get to the hundredths place where we have a 5 and a 6. The 5 is less than the 6, so that's how we compare. So when you have positive numbers, it's just like when we compare any other numbers. Decimals and zeros. Remember that 8 and 5/10ths is the same as 8 and 50 hundredths and the same as 8 and 500 thousandths, okay? After that decimal point, we can add on those zeros and it does not affect the value of your number. So let's look at this and say greater than, less than, or equal to. This has a 26 before our decimal. This has a 26 before our decimal. From there, they both have a 2. The next number is a 0 and an 8. So which one is a larger value? The 8. The 8 is larger. It says if you need to, you can add a 0 after that so they have the same amount of places in their place value, digits in their place value. Okay, if you need to do that. At this point, we did not because we knew our 0 was less than our 8. Next, we have 12 hundredths and 26 thousandths. This one is bigger because the 1 is bigger than the 0. Finally, moving on to rounding. Rounding is only difficult because you have to know where your places are and then look at the next one. So we have the number 63 and 782 thousandths, and we want to round to the nearest hundredth. So we find our hundredths place. We look at the number next to it. The 2 tells us we're going to leave the 8 the same. So then we can just drop off any numbers after the 8. When we round whole numbers, we had to add zeros to replace all of those. When we're rounding decimals, we just drop off anything past that number. No digits left. So if we have 326 and 4,386 10,000ths, and we're rounding to the nearest tenth. What digit is in my 10th place?
4.
The 4. And so I look at the next number, which is my 3. The 3 says, leave it the same. And so it becomes 326 and 4/10. We have 5,942 10,000ths, and we're rounding to the nearest thousandth. So we need to find what digit is in our thousandths place. What digit is in our thousandths place? The 4. We look at the digit next to that. It is a 2. So we are going to leave it the same. So we end up with 594 thousandths. Our final example is 67 thousandths, and we're rounding it to the nearest cent. When I have rounding to the nearest cent, how many places are in cents? 2, right? We are looking for 2 places because when we have cents, we're talking about hundredths. When I round that to the nearest cent, I look at my 6. My 7 is next to it. What does my 7 tell me to do? Round up, and so it becomes 7 cents. Questions? Okay, there are 17 problems on your homework assignment online.